That's why I'm always grateful, forever thankful.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us all rise for the arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
The 55th session of the Senate in the third regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. May we ask Senator Pastor Joel Villanueva to lead the chamber in prayer?
Ay, kala ko ako.
I'm sorry, Lauren is here. Senator Lauren Legarda will lead us in prayer.
Thank you. May I request, with the permission of the Senate President and the body, that a song whose words I wrote be played It's a very amateurish song, but it comes from the heart. It's for all the victors in these elections, and even those who did not win in the polls, there's victory in your heart. And so it's a song of gratefulness and thankfulness.
In lieu of a prayer, this is most welcome. And you will have to forgive the Senate President. I did not see you just moments ago. I thought there was a young lady walking around inside the session hall. So you may proceed, Senator Legarda.
Mr. President, I cannot vote for your election as the next Senate President, so I still accept your kind words. May I therefore request that the song be played? Thank you.
I am grateful that I wake up seeing you. Grateful that I can see, hear, feel, and taste. I am thankful that I am alive, living, exciting, inspiring. I am grateful for the sounds of nature, always there, constant, reminding me of you. I am thankful I can witness and scale the verdant mountains, even in my dreams. Inspiring, exciting, always grateful. Gratitude is in my heart, never failing and never forgetting that love is you and you are love. That's why I'm always grateful, forever thankful, forever thankful. Gratitude is in my heart.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
patience and tolerance in that amateurish song. I offer also the photos taken in my beloved province of Antique. Thank you, Mr. President.
Congratulations. Thank you for that wonderful piece of music and lyrics. The Secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 13 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journals of the 44th session, January 14, 2019, and the 52nd session of February 6, 2019, and 54th session of May 20, 2019, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? Are you objecting, Senator Villar? She's
late.
not. Okay,
She's not late. She's on time.
Yes.
She was listening to the song of Senator Lauren in the back,
All right.
Mr. President.
Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. Journal is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business. Message of the President of the Philippines. Letter of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte dated 12 April 2019 pursuant to Section 27, Paragraph 1, Article 6 of the 1987 Constitution, returning without his signature the enrolled Senate Bill number 1917/House Bill number 7820 entitled An Act Granting Survivorship Benefits to the Dependent Children of a Deceased Retired Member of the Commission on Audit, Civil Service Commission, Commission on Elections, and the Ombudsman who is a solo parent or the surviving parent parents or nominated persons of such deceased retiree, amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 10084 entitled An Act Granting Survivorship Benefits to the Surviving Legitimate Spouse of a Deceased Retired Member of the Commission on Audit, Civil Service Commission, Commission on Elections, and the Ombudsman, and for other purposes, with the following veto message. While I support the importance of passing this enrolled bill to authorize additional benefits to the Commission on Audit, the Civil Service Commission, the Commission on Elections, the Ombudsman, and admire the work of the men and women in these constitutional offices, I am apprehensive that the provisions granting benefits beyond the current compensation framework for other government offices may prove to be too onerous to the government because A, the new benefits granted in addition to the benefits enjoyed by other government offices would erode the national government's thrust to standardize and rationalize the current compensation framework in the bureaucracy, and B, it will create too many disparity and inequality in compensation among public servants as the additional benefits proposed in the enrolled bill are extraordinary benefits and are not granted to any government official under the current government compensation framework. In view of these considerations, I am constrained to veto the above-mentioned enrolled bill.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Bills on first reading, Senate Number 2219, entitled An Act Institutionalizing the Participation of Civil Society Organizations, CSOs, in the preparation and authorization process of the annual national budget, providing effective mechanisms therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lacson.
Referred to the Committees on Electoral Reforms and Finance.
Senate Number 2220, entitled An Act Exempting All Vehicles from Paying Toll Fees in Certain Holidays, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree Number 1112 as amended, introduced by Senator Soto III.
Referred to the Committee on Public Services.
Senate Number 2221, entitled An Act Establishing the Marinduque Sports Academy and Training Center in Barangay Baliis, Municipality of Santa Cruz in the province of Marinduque, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Sports and Finance.
Senate Number 2222, entitled An Act Creating the Energy Consumer Advocate Office, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Trade, Civil Service, and Finance.
Senate Number 2223, entitled An Act Further Amending Republic Act Number 8182 as amended by Republic Act Number 8555 and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Economic Affairs and Finance.
Resolutions. PS Resolution Number 1038, entitled Resolution Directing the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the reported rampant violations of the Philippine Immigration Act and of the Anti-Trafficking of Persons Act at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, NAIA, committed by a syndicate of middle-level Bureau of Immigration officials with the end in view of crafting remedial measures to ensure accountability of government officials tasked to enforce them, introduced by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
Referred to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations.
PS Resolution Number 1039, entitled Resolution Directing the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality to conduct an investigation in aid of legislation on the case of Gian Habal, who was killed during police operations in Caloocan, as well as other children who have been victims of anti-drug police operations under the current administration, introduced by Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committees on Public Order, Women, and Women.
Communication, letter from Secretary Salvador C. Medialdea, dated 15 April 2019, transmitting to Congress through the Senate, Republic Act Number 11260, or the Fiscal Year 2019 General Appropriations Act, duly signed by the President, and the President's Budget Action Message.
To the archives. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we proceed with our additional reference of business? I know there's a second batch of additional reference of business.
We are not ready with the second additional reference of business.
That's for a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended. All right, the session is resumed. The Secretary will proceed with the additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business, bills on first reading. Senate Number 2224, entitled An Act Protecting Children by Prohibiting and Declaring Child Marriage as Illegal and Imposing Penalties thereof, introduced by Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committees on Women and Social Justice.
Senate Number 2225, entitled An Act Establishing a National Evaluation Policy, introduced by Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committees on Economic Affairs and Finance.
PS Resolution Number 1040 entitled Resolution Calling for Investigation in Aid of Legislation into Recent Incidents of Extortion and Corruption at the Bureau of Immigration, introduced by Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Referred to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations.
That's it? May I ask for a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
Ito, meron ka dito nakalagay, Rural Employment Assistance Program. Sino? Si Cheese? Bicam ka, Cheese? You want? Ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. While the sponsor of SOT together with Senator Rector are still discussing the wordings of their amendments, we move to consider Senate Bill number 2 on the agenda for interpellation, Senate Bill number 2119. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the consideration of the measure is in order.
This is an act providing a rural employment assistance program and appropriating funds therefore. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Angara, to sponsor the measure. I mean to take up any interpellation.
This is Senate Bill
Senate Bill number 2119, Your Honor.
2119.
Yeah, number 2 on our agenda.
Yes, Senator Angara is recognized.
For the record, Mr. President, no member had signified to interpolate the measure.
Just be ready. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maybe just for a recap, Mr. President, the good gentleman from Aurora can remind the chamber again what the measure is all about.
It's the Rural Employment Assistance Program. This is Committee Report number 524. It's a cash for work program geared towards rural areas to help poor families in the rural areas with temporary volunteer unskilled labor for 45 to 90 days. It's more commonly known as the TUPAD program, which is known to most of the ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, Mr. President.
All right, so are there any interpellations?
One question from the Senate President Pro Tem.
The Senate President Pro Temp is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a clarification. If it is the TUPAD program, similar to what you have in the DOLE, the TUPAD program, why only in the rural areas then?
I'm sorry, why specifically?
Why only in the rural areas? Because the TUPAD program does not distinguish between rural and urban.
Urban. Ako kasi may urban poor.
What's the answer? I'm told that the poverty incidence is higher in the rural areas, but nothing prevents us from amending the measure, Mr. President.
Maybe at the appropriate time, since the TUPAD program is implemented both in the rural and in the urban areas, and for those unemployed, regardless of the unemployment rate, maybe more resources in the rural, but definitely there's still unemployment also in the urban areas.
Is it population? Nothing prevents us from, and I would welcome any amendments from the brilliant mind of the Senate President pro tempore, Mr. President, in this regard.
Yes, thank you. So at the appropriate time, maybe we can introduce
The
amendments.
House of Recto can introduce the amendments,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
President.
President, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, no other members wish to interpolate the measure. We move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? The chair hears none. The period of interpellation is closed.
May we open, with the permission of the body, move to open the period of interpellation to allow Senator Recto to...
Amendments, I mean.
I'm sorry, period of amendments.
Maybe we can suspend, Mr. President, to give time to Senator Recto to
Okay.
propose possible amendments.
With that, Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have several local bills on the creation of regional trial courts, Mr. President. The sponsor is here, Senator Gordon. I move that we consider, number 4 of the agenda, I move that we consider House Bill number 5906. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Ito yung, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, and to propound a few questions, Mr. President, our distinguished minority floor leader.
Senator Richard Gordon, sponsor of the measure, is recognized, and to interpolate, Senator,
That's the one.
the minority leader, Senator Frank Relon.
That's the one, sir.
Sa yung mga caseload.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Caseload, 400.
For the record, we have no problem with this measure, but we would like to ask a few questions just to establish certain premises for the establishment of this RTC. This is an additional branch of the RTC to be stationed in the municipality of Bungabong. Nueva Ecija ba ito? Nueva Ecija ba ito? This is in Occidental Mindoro. You see, Oriental Mindoro. Now, for the record, can we spread in the record, Mr. President, the rationale for creating this court again?
Mr. President, thank you very much for the question. Bungabon, Mr. President, has no existing sala right now. The philosophy behind the creation of additional courts is, for example, the accessibility to justice, Mr. President, is important to our people. But at the same time, the absence of a sala here, particularly an RTC or in 4 MTCs in Bansud, Bulalakaw, Gloria, and Mansalay, all in the province of Isabela. For example, in Bungabon, first-class municipality, has a population of 72,073, Mr. President. And the adjoining provinces or municipalities Bansud has 20,992, which is second-class municipality, 40,000, I'm sorry. And Bulalakaw has a third-class municipality, has 39,017 people, Mr. President. And the last one is a population of, I'm sorry, that includes 45,073 for Gloria, and Mansalay, the last one, has 54,533 people, Mr. President.
All right.
Now, Mindoro is, as we all know, is kind of isolated. I think that's one of why the Justice Presby Velasco became governor, if I'm not mistaken, in that place. Or is it Occidental Mindoro?
No idea, sir. Well, nandito yung 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Wala talagang sala doon. Masyado malidikit yung papel. Malidikit. First level, RTC. Municipal.
500 yung ideal case.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, in the previous laws that we enacted creating additional regional trial courts, there is a provision that basically reads, the funds, and I quote Republic Act 10704, under Section 3, it partly reads of Republic Act 10704, the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel. At the appropriate time, would the good sponsor be willing to include this provision in existing laws?
Definitely, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, we have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
No other members wish to interpolate. We move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of interpolation is closed.
May we move to open the period of amendments and recognize the good minority floor leader for the
Period of amendments is open, and we recognize the sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon.
and to propose amendments, Senator.
The minority leader, Senator
Drilon.
Drilon, is recognized.
Ano yan?
Mr. President, on page 2 of the bill under consideration, particularly on line 12, our amendment is as follows. The comma after the word Mindoro should be changed into a period, and the line, the rest of the line appearing on line 12 up to line 13 is proposed to be deleted and substituted with the following. The funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel. That is the proposed amendment.
We accept, Your Honor.
Amendment accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Will there be any committee amendments, Mr. President?
No, Your Honor.
Therefore, Mr. President, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, move to approve on second reading House Bill number 5906. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, House Bill 5906 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, before we take up the other RTC or the regional trial courts, with the permission of Senator Gordon, we'll just quickly adopt or ratify a bicameral conference committee report, if it's all right, really quickly. With that, Mr. President, we are in receipt of the bicameral conference committee report. Let me just look for it, Mr. President. Where is it? On the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 3222, entitled An Act Establishing a National Vision Screening Program for Kindergarten Pupils and Appropriating Funds, therefore. I move to consider the said bicameral committee report. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator, any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I request that a joint explanation of the conference committee report be inserted into the records. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, so inserted.
Bicameral report, yes. Mr. President, with that, I move to adopt and ratify the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 3222 and consider the report of the Senate panel inserted into the records of the Senate. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill 3222 is hereby approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I believe the good sponsor, the chairman of the Committee on Education, has other measures he would like to us to adopt, Mr. President. May we recognize Senator Escudero.
Senator Escudero, second.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are in receipt of House Bill number 6283 entitled An Act Recognizing the Observance of November 17 of every year as National Students' Day. This is not a holiday, Mr. President. The counterpart Senate bill is Senate Bill number 756, which the Chamber approved on third reading on August 28, 2018. After going through the provisions of House Bill number 6283, may I move, Mr. President, as Chair of the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, that we adopt House Bill number 6283 as an amendment to Senate Bill number 756, sans a bicameral conference committee. I so move, Mr. President.
Before we act on the measure, may we know if this has already been filed? The Secretariat is looking for a copy. So in the meantime, may we declare a 1-minute suspension.
Ano yun? Ano yun?
Ina-adapt ko lang yung version na rin kasi mag-bicam kami. Nag-agree kami, may i-adapt silang version natin, may i-adapt
Pero nasabit na ba yung kanina dito na approve ng third reading na sila?
Local din ko eh.
Mr. President? Yeah, Mr. President, while we are waiting the report from the record
Session is
section.
resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we are waiting for the record section to give us the document, with the permission of the body, may we ask that we designate the members, the Senate President's designation of the Senate Conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2133 and House Bill number 6524. This is an act further strengthening the powers and functions of the authority of the Freeport area, Bataan. Mr. President,
Well,
Your designees.
okay. Does that imply that you are withdrawing the motion of Senator Escudero?
yes, Mr. President, for the meantime, we'll set this aside while we're waiting for the documents.
All right, so you may proceed.
Mr. President, the designees for the Bicameral Conference Committee for Senate Bill number 2133 and House Bill number 6522. Your Honor.
The following members are designated as Senate conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee. Senator Gatchalian as chairperson and members Binay, Angara, Zubiri, Gordon, and Rilon.
Yung Freeport area. Thank you, Mr. President. Is, whatever, I move for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended. No, I designated you.
Marami to? Sige, mauna. Nasa number 1 ka naman na agenda. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, the next item of the agenda is ready for action, Mr. President. This is, and I move to consider Senate Bill number 1826. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order.
These are amendments to the Security of Tenure Act, and we'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator Joel Villanueva, for an extensive, extensive number of amendments. Mr. President.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. These are part of individual amendments, part of the interpellation and the consensus of the majority of several senators. Mr. President, may I be allowed to introduce individual amendments? On page 2, line 5, after the second comma, insert the word who. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the amendment is adopted.
On page 2, line 6, delete the words regardless of. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On same page, line 7, delete the words whether or not he or she. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 7, after the word has, insert the word no.
Huh? Again, the word?
On the same page, line 7, after the word has, insert the word no. Thus, the
No.
first portion of the sentence will now read, Mr. President, there is labor-only contracting where the job contractor, whether licensed or not, who merely recruits and supplies or places workers to a contractee has no substantial capital or investment in the form of tools, equipment, machineries, work premises, among others. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the amendment is adopted.
Before we move forward, Mr. President, let me just put on record, we want to put on record that the important element here is the activity of the job contractor, which is merely to supply or recruit workers and has no change. And the change to who merely recruits and supplies or places has no substantial capital is not intended to provide job contractors protection and solace in the amount of their capitalization when the activity is merely supply and recruitment of workers. We want to put also on record, Mr. President, that we take the amendment as a reiteration of the required possession of substantial capital, which is a requirement for licensing in the proposed Article 107 of the bill to ensure that the job contractor will have enough funds for the salary and benefits of its employees. Mr. President, on page 2, line 11, after word the and before the word control, insert the word direct. The amendment, Mr.
Direct.
President, reflects the language of the Supreme Court decisions as well as what we have in mind. So we'd like to put that as an amendment, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
After line 14, insert a new paragraph as follows. For the purposes of this article, the specific job, work, or service that are deemed directly related to the principal business of a contractee shall be determined by the appropriate industry tripartite council, which shall be issued through regulations by the Secretary of Labor and Employment, period. In the absence of a determination by the appropriate industry council, the Secretary of Labor and Employment shall determine the standard criteria after consultation with the National Tripartite Industrial Peace Council. I so move, Mr. President. But before we act on this motion, Mr. President, may I just give an explanation? This amendment, as earlier stated, recognizes the expertise of the industries to determine the tasks or functions which are directly related through an industry tripartite council under Article 275 of the Labor Code as amended by Republic Act number 10395. The DOLE reported that there are 10 functional national industrial tripartite councils, Mr. President, namely Clothing and Textile, ITC, Construction Industry Tripartite Council, Banking Industry Tripartite Council, Automotive Assembly Industry Tripartite Council, Maritime Industry Tripartite Council, Sugar Tripartite Council, and Hotel and Restaurant Tripartite Consultative Body Incorporated, National Education Industry Tripartite Council, Overseas Land-Based Tripartite Consultative Council, and the NCR-based Broadcast Industry Tripartite Council. There are also region-based industry tripartite councils, such as the Banana Industry Tripartite Council in Davao, the Fishing Industry Tripartite Council based in Region 12, and the Mining Industry Tripartite Council in Caraga. In the Industry Tripartite Council, other than the employers in the industry and the labor sector, the DOLE involved other concerned government agencies, such as the Department of Trade and Industry. Again, Mr. President, this amendment will give the labor sector the opportunity to voice their concerns in the contracting out of certain jobs or services, and at the same time, give the employers the opportunity to present the realities of the operations of their businesses and give them appropriate flexibility to adjust to changes dictated by their businesses, especially in light of rapidly changing technologies. Again, Mr. President, this will provide stability. The listing of tasks or functions that may or may not be contracted out removes the wide latitude of discretion of DOLE inspectors and contractees on what is directly related or not, including that of the labor sector. Currently, Mr. President, the contractee makes a determination of what jobs, tasks are directly related to its business. Also, the DOLE inspectors rely on their own judgment or understanding during inspection on what jobs, tasks being contracted out are directly related, while DOLE directors and Secretary of Labor also have their own separate determination on whether these jobs, tasks contracted out are directly related to the principal business of the contractee. The justices of the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court separately determine the relatedness of the tasks or functions to the principal business of the contractee. Having an industry-determined listing will also remove the litigiousness of the process and dissatisfaction from both sides of the employers and the affected workers. So that's the reason why we are introducing this amendment. And so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? The chair hears none. The amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 2, line 16, delete the word outright. The paragraph will now read as follows. In all cases where labor-only contracting is present, the workers shall be deemed regular employees of the contractee in accordance with law, retroactive to the date they were first deployed to said contractee, without prejudice to any criminal, civil, or administrative case against the labor-only contractor and the contractee. If I may explain, Mr. President, thus in the event of a finding that labor-only contracting exists, the employees affected shall be deemed regular employees to the contractee, consistent with the decisions of the Supreme Court. For example, in Manila Memorial Park Cemetery versus Luz, GR number 208451, the court held that the employees of the labor-only contractor are regular employees of the principal. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Mr. President, thank you. On page 2, delete lines 21 to 29. These provisions are already existing, Mr. President, under current regulations. In any event, we would like to just put on record, Mr. President, that the rule is clear. Compliance orders issued by the Secretary of Labor are immediately executory unless restrained by the appropriate courts. Affected employees may not also be dismissed unless for cause as provided under the Labor Code. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 3, line 2, delete the 2 commas and the phrase, which shall include the government. May I be allowed to explain, Mr. President, why we are accepting this amendment? The Civil Service Commission has a separate rule and on the permissible contracting arrangements that may be entered into by government offices. This amendment considers the position of the CSC and NEDA on the possible fiscal implication to the government. In any event, aside from seeking to end the abuses related to contractualization in the private sector, we are also pushing for genuine SOT bill for government workers. In fact, Mr. President, this representation filed Senate Bill number 1164, which seeks to institutionalize the right to security of tenure of all casual and contractual employees of the government who have rendered the prescribed time period. Again, Mr. President, we wanted to introduce this particular amendment. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 3, line 12, delete the words "that shall not be directly related to." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 13, delete the words "the principal business of the contractee." To explain, Mr. President, while we are accepting this amendment, we would also like to put on record and emphasize that consistent with our earlier amendment, the jobs that are considered directly related to a certain industry must be determined by the appropriate industry tripartite council and reflected in appropriate regulations issued by the Secretary of Labor and Employment. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted. Before we... All right, the amendment is adopted. Senator Drilon is recognized.
Before the next amendment is introduced, I noticed that the sponsor says, we accept this amendment. Are these committee amendments or individual amendments?
This is individual amendments, Mr. President.
Can we state for the record who is the senator who proposes the amendment?
There are several senators,
Yes,
Mr.
can we
President.
mention the senators? Because it's so unusual that the sponsor is accepting something. If it's a committee amendment, then he's the chair of the committee, and that doesn't require his acceptance. But if these are individual amendments, yes, under our rules, it must be accepted by the...
Yes, for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, during the break, the good sponsor explained to this representation his inability to go on record in answer to our question. We therefore withdraw our question.
We place that on record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the distinguished minority floor leader for understanding where this representation is coming from. There are a bunch of, a list of senators who gave their amendments, and as chair, we accepted this. So somehow this is also, this has become my individual amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 3, Mr. President, line 19, after the word "and," delete the word "have" and insert the phrase "with substantial capital or investment in the form of." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 20, after the word "tools," insert the words "which are reasonably." I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
May I just also explain, Mr. President, that the requirement of reasonableness of the tools, equipment, or machinery is also consistent with Supreme Court decisions. In Phil Fuji versus NLRC, GR number 111501, March 5, 1996, the court held that this requirement to have tools clearly contemplates tools, equipment, etc., which are directly related to the service it is being contracted to render. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, on page 3, line 37, after the word organization, insert the words or contractee. And to explain, Mr. President, this amendment seeks to give the same right of access to information to contractees in their exercise of due diligence in scrutinizing bona fide legitimate contractors that they will contract with. We would also like to emphasize that current dollar regulations already allows legitimate labor organizations to access the records of contractors subject to compliance with the rules prescribed by the Department of Labor and Employment. Moreover, Mr. President, Executive Order Number 2, Series of 2016 already clarifies the policy of the government to make information available to the public consistent with the constitutional right granted to every Filipino to information. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Page 4, Mr. President, delete the entire section 6, starting from lines 27 to 40 on page 4 and lines 1 to 10 on page 5. We are adopting this, Mr. President, because this particular provision seeks to provide unemployment insurance to displaced employees due to contractualization. However, Mr. President, this is already covered under Section 14-B of Republic Act number 11191, that, which we passed in this Congress, which provides for unemployment insurance or involuntary separation benefits. This is also consistent with the position of the Department of Budget and Management, which posted that the objectives of this provision are already covered by the existing adjustment measurement programs of the DOLE and the various scholarship programs of TESDA. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On page 5, line 16, after the word provision, insert the word of Title 2, Book 3. Thus, the provision will now read as follows. Article 109, Solidary Liability. The provisions of existing laws to the contrary notwithstanding, every contractee shall be held solidarily liable with the job contractor for any violation of any provision of Title 2, Book 3 of this Code. For purposes of determining the extent of their civil liability under this chapter, they shall be considered as direct employees. May I be allowed to explain further, Mr. President? We are
Employees
accepting...
or employers?
Employers, Mr. President.
No.
Direct employers. Thank you. Mr. President, just to briefly explain the acceptance of this amendment, this is consistent, Mr. President, with the Supreme Court interpretation of the import of the provision in Rosewood Processing versus NLRC, where the court ruled that the joint and several liability of the employer or principal was enacted to ensure compliance with the provisions of the code, principally those on statutory minimum wage. The contractor or subcontractor is made liable by virtue of his or her status as a direct employer, and the principal as the indirect employer of the contractor's employees. This liability facilitates, if not guarantees, payment of the workers' compensation, thus giving the workers ample protection as mandated by the 1987 Constitution. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 5, delete lines 34 to 36 and replace with the following. Article 295, Status of Employment. The provisions of written or oral agreements to the contrary, notwithstanding, all employees except those under probationary, seasonal, or project employment shall be deemed regular. May I be allowed to explain, Mr. President? This amendment, particular amendment, seeks to reiterate the current rule that the nomenclature used in the agreements of the parties is not important. What is important is the nature of the relationship between the employer and the employee. For example, if the employer exercises control over the employee, Moreover, Mr. President, this provision also clarifies the classification of employees to regular, probationary, project, and seasonal employees. This is to recognize the peculiar nature of the tasks, services being performed by project and seasonal employees in relation to probationary or regular employees. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 5, line 37, after the word employees, delete the words are regular and insert the phrase shall have the rights of regular employees. Thus, the sentence shall now read as follows. Project and seasonal employees shall have the rights of regular employees for the duration of the project or season as the case may be. And please allow me to explain, Mr. President, this amendment emphasizes that the project and seasonal employees, while engaged as such, shall also enjoy the rights of regular employees such as the payment of minimum wage, overtime pay, night shift differential, holiday pay, security of tenure, among others. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 6, line 7, after the period, delete the following sentence. In project and seasonal employment, workers are called to work from time to time and temporarily laid off during the completion of the project or off-season but are in the work pool on leave with or without pay status in between projects or seasons. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 6, lines 12 to 14. Sorry, Mr. President. On page 6, may we move that we delete lines 12 and to 14. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 6, line 26, after the period, delete the phrase, the job description and qualification standards. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
On the same page, Mr. President, delete lines 27 to 28. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, Mr. President, line 32, delete the bracket. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none, amendment is adopted.
On the same page, line 35, delete the bracket, Mr. President. And the, I so move, Mr. President, sorry.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Almost done. On page 7, Mr. President, we move to delete lines 7 to 13 and replace with the following. Letter E, other causes analogous to the foregoing. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none, amendment is adopted.
Last but not the least, Mr. President, on page 7, line 19, delete the words for validation. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none, amendment is adopted.
And may we move that we renumber the particular measure with the section and the numbers appropriately, Mr. President, subject to style.
So renumbered.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, Mr. President, we move to suspend consideration while awaiting the clean copy of the measure. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is suspended, or you're not closing the period of amendments, no? Just
Are there any more amendments? from our
suspended the
colleagues?
consideration?
Maybe suspend so that if Senator Dillon may look at some other,
No, just to
Minimum-
make sure that there is a clean copy. So
Yes,
we
Mr. President.
suspend consideration
suspend
of the measure.
consideration of the measure.
Thank you.
Tinutulungan eh.
The majority leader, you should not be talking to young ladies when there is a session.
I know, Mr. President.
Who is that?
I was being distracted by my commander-in-chief.
Oh, all right.
That happens to be my ex-girlfriend, who's
I
now
see.
my boss, my roommate. Anyways, Mr. President, going back to the query or the manifestation of Senator, or the motion of Senator Escudero earlier, this is the proper motion, Mr. President, after checking
Okay.
with the records. Mr. President, on September 19, 2017, we received House Bill number 6283, an act reorganizing the observance of November 17 of every year as National Students' Day. The counterpart of the Senate Bill number 756, which this chamber approved on third reading on August 28, 2018. After going over the provisions of House Bill 6283, I'm doing this motion for him, Mr. President, that he moves that as chair of the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, that the Senate adopt House Bill number 6283 as an amendment to Senate Bill number 756. I make the motion on his behalf, Mr. President. I so move.
So you adopt the motion.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? The chair hears none. House Bill 6283 is hereby adopted as an amendment to Senate Bill 756.
Thank you, Mr. President. And another measure is Philippine PUP, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, San Juan. Mr. President, we have received House Bill number 8845, an act establishing a campus of the PUP in the city of San Juan, Metro Manila, the city of Senator JV, to be known as the PUP San Juan Campus. We received this on January 30, 2019. The counterpart of the Senate Bill number 884, which this chamber approved on third reading on December 11, 2017. After going over the provisions of House Bill number 8845, the chair moves, or the chair of the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture moves that the Senate adopt House Bill number 8845 as an amendment to Senate Bill number 884. I concur, Mr. President. I so move that we adopt.
Any objection? Hearing none. House Bill 8845 is hereby adopted as an amendment to Senate Bill 884.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll continue, Mr. President, with the creation of additional RTCs, Regional Trial Courts. Number 5 on the agenda, I move that we consider House Bill number 6580. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of 6580 is in order.
This, I believe, is an act creating 4 additional branches of Regional Trial Court in the 9th Judicial Region, stationed in Zamboanga City. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Gordon, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. I move that we close the period of interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the period of interpellation is closed.
I move that we open the period of amendments and ask the sponsor if there are any amendments.
Senator Gordon is recognized for the period of amendment.
The amendment.
We have no committee amendments, Your Honor.
Mr. President, may we recognize the minority floor leader for individual amendments, Mr. President.
Minority leader is recognized.
Gamitin mo yung sinabi niya kanina.
Mr. President, will the gentleman yield the floor to one amendment?
Always my great friend, Mr. President. The gentleman from
Mr.
Iloilo.
President, on page 2, section 2, delete the comma and replace with a period. Saan? On which? Saan? Hold on, 1 minute suspended.
Session suspended.
Ano po? Tagal-tagal mo nang.
Ilagay mo na, ihanda mo na.
Mr. Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Saan ang kama dito? Saan dito? Saan dito? Saan ang kama? Ito? Ito? And? With the place of the period. Okay. Mr. President, on line 5 on page 2, of we propose to replace the comma appearing after city, replace the comma with a period, and delete the rest of the sentence appearing on line 5, starting with the, ending with line 6, and in its place, insert the following phrase: the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released upon the organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel. End of the proposed amendment. So we submit, Mr. President.
We accept it, Your Honor.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Will I act as the majority leader, Mr. President?
I think he's still dazed by the presence of his, the woman he fooled.
No, Mr. President, they may continue. Is it over? Tapos na? With that, Mr. President, no further amendments. We close the period of amendments.
Any
I didn't
objection?
realize it was
There
that short.
being none, period of committee amendments or amendments is closed.
Mahaba-haba. Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6580. So moved.
Any objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 6580 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 3492. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in
These
order.
are new regional trial courts to be stationed in Macabebe, Pampanga. We recognize the sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, and for the record, Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate to speed up the process. We move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? There being none, period of interpolation is closed.
I move to open the period of amendments, and are there any?
Period of amendments is open, and we recognize Senator Gordon.
I just want to facilitate to spare
Yeah.
Senator Dillon, because I think his comments are quite prescient, and I would just like to adopt his previous amendments to the forthcoming bills on creation of courts. And I'd like to quote, remove Section 4. This will be a committee amendment now. And it should read as follows, Mr. President. The funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel. That is the amendment, Mr. President.
As so proposed by the minority leader. Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
There are no one,
With
Mr.
that,
President.
Mr. President, we close the period of amendments.
Before we leave the period of amendment, may we know what line and what page you wanted that in?
We will delete line
Page-
1, Mr. President.
Page 2, line 1, Mr. President.
Page 2, line 1, after Section 4, and you insert the amendment as already stated, Mr. President.
All right. You place that on record. So
From
the
the word
motion
"the," we insert the amendment, Mr. President, up to
After
the
the
last
word "the."
act.
All right.
Yes, sir, thank you.
So, the majority leader?
Mr. President, with that, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, move to approve on second reading House Bill number 3492.
Any objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 3492 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1542. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, measure is in order.
Mr. President, this is a creation of 2 additional RTCs, I believe, in province of Sultan Kudarat. Mr. President, we recognize the good Sponsor, Senator Gordon, but for the record, no member wishes to interpolate, so we move to close the period of interpolation.
Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, move to open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor for these amendments.
Senator Gordon is recognized for the period of amendments.
Yes, Mr. President, we have a committee amendment, and as follows, on line 11 of page 1, section 2, line 11, we will insert the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel. So moved, Mr. President.
May we have a 1-minute suspension?
Meron bang? Meron ba?
Session resumed. May we hear the amendment again, Senator Gordon?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your advice, as well as the advice of all our colleagues here, particularly Senator Dillon. On this particular issue of Senate Bill number 1542, on line 10, we will correct our amendment and make the adjustment to delete on line 10. First, we will delete the comma after funding, Mr. President,
Yes.
and then the rest of the words of funding up to the word act, Mr. President, shall be replaced by the amendment as proposed, Mr. President, and I will read it again to be clear. They shall be replaced by the words, the funding, funds necessary from the word the, funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel, period. That's the amendment, Your Honor.
All right. Subject to style. Any objection? Chair hears none. Amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Subject to style ko na para may mali. Majority Leader,
Thank you,
there are
Mr.
no more
President.
amendments?
With that, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1542.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill 1542 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1840. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of 1840 is in order.
These are additional regional trial courts in the province of Zamboanga del Norte. Mr. President, we recognize the sponsor, Senator Gordon, and for the record, no member wishes to interpolate. We move to close the period of interpolation.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendments.
Period of amendments is open, and we recognize Senator Richard Gordon.
We have a committee amendment, Mr. President, on page 2, line 5, after the word paracelis, there should be a period thereat, and then the word the shall be in capital letters, T should be in capital letters, and continuing with the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel. Period, Mr. President. So the whole words, the words funding of which shall be included in the annual General Appropriations Act on line 5 and 6 shall all be deleted, Mr. President, and replaced with the proposed amendment.
This version, Mr. President, may I call the attention of the Majority Leader? This version says that it is already there. Section 2. Will you please review
May
before
we ask
after
1 minute
the amendment?
suspension, Mr.
Yes, 1 minute suspension. Sabihin mo.
So not necessary to amend anymore. Tito Dick, so we will withdraw your
I will withdraw it.
motion. Yeah. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. You're absolutely correct. The original version already has this amendment in place. So I believe the sponsor would like to make a motion.
Yes, Mr. President, sheepishly and with ashen face, I will accept the fault and not blame it on my staff. We got the wrong copy of the bill, and we thank again the Senate President and the staff of the Senate for. So we will withdraw the amendment.
Withdraw the amendment.
The bill stands as is, Mr. President.
All right, all right.
With that,
So
no
Majority
other-
Leader, yes.
There being no amendments, Mr. President, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendments is closed.
We move to approve on second reading House Bill number 1840.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill 1840 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we consider House Bill number 286. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure is in order.
This is the establishment of two new RTC courts at the Mountain Province. Mr. President, there being no member who wishes to interpolate the measure, we move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor for the amendments.
Period of amendments open. We recognize Senator
Thank you,
Gordon.
Mr. President. Apparently, in the previous amendments, there was a switch in the bills, but now it's corrected, Mr. President. I now go to page 2, section 5 of
Section
Republic
2.
Act 6, House Bill number, Committee Report 645, House Bill number 286. On line 5, Mr. President, after the word paracelis,
5.
delete the comma and replace it with the period, Mr. President. And delete the rest of the sentence up to act. And insert the following, Mr. President. The funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of the personnel. Of its personnel, Mr. President, not the personnel, of its personnel. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Amendment is adopted. No other amendment? Majority Leader?
Mr. President, being no further amendment, I move that we close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, move to approve on second reading House Bill number 286. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill 286, or House Bill 286 is approved in second reading.
Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Mr. President, move to consider House Bill number 3443.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. Move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor and open the period of amendments. I so move.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator
Again,
Gordon. Yes.
on page 2, after the word Pangasinan, delete the comma, Mr. President, and delete the entire sentence after that, the funding of which shall be included in the annual General Appropriations Act, and replace that with the line, the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel, period, Mr. President. So moved.
What line again?
Line 2, Mr. President,
Line 2,
page,
after Pangasinan. Yes. Any objection? Hearing none. Amendment is adopted.
There be any other amendment? Any more amendments?
Mr. President, may I just say that the amendment should, after the word Pangasinan, Mr. President, remove
Yes.
the comma and put a period. And then insert the amendments as proposed, Mr. President, which I've already read.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right.
With that, Mr. President, there being no other amendments, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 3443.
Any objection? Hearing
believe
none.
that's
House Bill
2433, Mr.
3443
President.
is approved on second reading.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Gordon, you were saying something?
No, it's,
That was 2433, Mr. President. I heard 3433.
no,
No,
we haven't,
3443.
we have not approved yet 3443. So it's 3443.
3443.
Okay. I'm getting all kinds of miscommunications here. I have it here, 2433, but I stand corrected. You are the
Yes.
authority, the gentleman from...
Yes, we are tackling the
That is 3443.
RTC courts in Asingan, province of Pangasinan. Did we amend the right bill?
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. President.
Correct,
Singan.
correct.
Thank you, Mr. President.
3443.
Saan tayo?
The guy beside Senator Gordon is the one who is wrong.
He's confused, the assistant of Senator Gordon. With
I am-
that, I move
as
for
a-
the...
As the great Justice Horado would say, I'm confused, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, I believe that we approved it on second reading,
Yes, we did.
so we can suspend consideration of this.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
So moving to House Bill 2433.
This
Yes,
is
Mr. President,
2433.
I move to consider the measure.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure is in order.
These are regional trial courts in the province of Batangas. Mr. President, there being no member who wishes to interpolate the measure, we move to close the period of interpolation.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the sponsor and open the period of amendments.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. On line 6, after the word agoncillo, delete the comma and put period, Mr. President. And then delete the next line up to 7, the funding of which shall be included in the annual General Appropriations Act. Delete the whole thing and replace it with the amendment as follows. The funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel. Thank you, Mr. President. Period.
Any objection? Hearing none. Amendment is adopted.
After we open. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, no other amendments. Mr. President, move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none. Period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, move to approve on second reading House Bill number 2433.
Hearing no objection, House Bill 2433 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 652.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
These are additional regional trial courts in the city of Osamis. Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. I move to close the period of interpolation.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor, Senator.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I clarify just, Mr. President, whether this is committee report number 648, Mr. President? 648?
Yes. Committee Report 648, House Bill 652.
All right, Mr. President, thank you. Thank you very much. On page 2, Mr. President, line 16, if I ask my colleagues to behave themselves, Mr. President, it adds to the confusion. Thank you, Mr. President. On line 16, after the word Occidental, replace the comma with a period, and then delete the rest of the words, the funding of which shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act, and replace it with the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel, period. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is adopted.
No further amendments, Mr. President. Move to close the period of amendments.
Hearing no objection, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, with that, we move to approve on second reading House Bill number 652. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 652 is approved on second reading.
Move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to consider House Bill number 7365.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
This is the creation of additional regional trial courts in San Pablo City, in the province of Laguna. Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate the measure. We move to close the period of interpolation.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendments and recognize the sponsor, Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 2, Mr. President, line 1, we will delete the comma and replace it with a period after the word Laguna. And the rest of the
Lines 2
and 3 will be
Yeah.
deleted, and they shall be replaced by the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel, period, Mr. President.
Any objection? Amendment is adopted.
Mr. President, with that, we move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 7365. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 7365 is approved in second reading.
Move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Baka the staff file it without going through us. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 7367. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Mr. President, I move that there being no member wish to interpolate, move to close the period of interpolation.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period of amendment and recognize the sponsor.
Senator Gordon is recognized for the period of amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, referring to the courts in Santa Rosa, Laguna, we will remove on page 2, line 10, the period, the comma after Laguna, and delete also the rest of line 10 and 11, starting with the words, the funding of which shall be included in the Annual General Appropriations Act, period, and replace it with the lines as follows.
Period after Laguna.
Yes, period after Laguna. I already said it, Mr. President. And we will replace it with the funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel, period, Mr. President. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is adopted.
With that, Mr. President, there being no other amendments, we move to close the period of amendments.
Hearing no objection, period of amendment is closed.
I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 7367. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 7367 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, the last bill on the regional trial court, I move that we consider House Bill number 7405. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we close the period of interpolation, as no member wishes to interpolate.
Hearing no objection, period of interpolation is closed.
Mr. President, move to open the period of amendment and recognize the distinguished sponsors.
Senator Gordon is recognized, period of amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. On line 3 of page 2, Mr. President, after the word Laguna, delete the word the comma and replace it with the period and then delete the rest of the sentence from the said period to line 4 and 5, Mr. President.
All right.
Which will now read as follows. The funds necessary for the operation of the courts herein created shall be appropriated and released only upon the actual organization of the courts and the appointment of its personnel, period. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is adopted.
Mr. President, with that, there being no other amendments, move to close the period of amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 7405.
Any objection? Hearing none, House Bill 7405 is approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move for a few minutes suspension.
Before that, Mr. President,
May
may
we
I offer
recognize the suspension?
my thanks to the Majority Floor Leader, particularly to Senate President Drilon, who called the attention of the Majority Floor Leader when he was occupied with some personal matters, and also the Senate President. But all is well that ends well, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
With my thanks.
Yes, for the hardworking Chairman of the Committee on Justice. Thank you very much. With that, Mr. President, we can take a
And
few
the
minutes
hardworking minority
on the
leader.
minority floor, eagle eyes of the minority floor leader. Mr. President, we thank him. Mr. President, may we have a few minutes suspension?
Session suspended for a few Senate minutes.
Magawa daw kayo ng advisory para tomorrow, meeting with Secretary Dominguez. Yung tama ba yun? Diyan, ano yun, after the roll call?
Caucus, roll call.
Anong tawag doon? Caucus? O what no? Meeting lang.
Hindi na kailangan.
Hindi na ako magpa-issue.
Mapaisip pa yan. Basta roll call, after roll call. Attorney, your coffee.
Tito Frank, tignan mo to. Tignan mo.
Ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I move for additional reference of business?
The Secretary will proceed with the additional reference of business.
Second additional reference of business, messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 7 February 2019, it designated Representative Alvarez, Castro, Yap, Almario, Zamora, and Suarez as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes on House Number 8179 entitled an act granting Solar para sa Bayan Corporation a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain distributable power technologies and mini-grid systems throughout the Philippines to improve access to sustainable energy.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate on 8 February 2019, it designated Representatives Alvarez, Tugna, Tejada, Pimentel, and Garbin Jr. as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes on the following House bills. House Number 5558 entitled, an act granting the Golden Nation Network, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations within the Philippines, and House Number 6168 entitled, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Pacific Broadcasting System, Inc. under Republic Act Number 7967 entitled, an act granting the Pacific Broadcasting System, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations within the Philippines and for other purposes.
To the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 20 May 2019, it designated Representative Velarde Jr., Aumentado, Lacson, De Venecia, Haloshos, Salceda, Bertiz, and Arcillas as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions on House Number 8541 entitled, an act establishing the Philippine Space Development and Utilization Policy and creating the Philippine Space Agency, defining the purpose and scope of its activities and appropriating funds therefore in anticipation of the approval by the Senate of its counterpart, Senate Number 1983.
To the Committee on Rules.
Committee reports. Committee report number 662, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies on Senate number 2226 with Senators Lacson, Pimentel III, De Lima, Zubiri, and Aquino IV, and Escudero as authors thereof, entitled An Act Allowing Disclosure of Deposits, Repealing for the Purpose the Pertinent Laws on Secrecy of Deposits, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 47, 115, 196, 1124, and 1495, sponsor Senator Escudero.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 663, submitted by the Committee on Public Services and House number 8632, introduced by Representatives Nograles et al., entitled An Act Renewing for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to RT Broadcast Specialist Philippines, Inc. under Republic Act number 8126, entitled An Act Granting the RT Broadcast Specialist Philippines a franchise to construct, establish, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in Mindanao, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Grace Poe.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 664, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House number 8633, introduced by Representative Ferrer et al., entitled An Act Renewing for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Ultimate Entertainment, Inc. under Republic Act number 8102, entitled An Act Granting the Ultimate Entertainment, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, maintain, and operate radio broadcasting stations within the Philippines, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Grace Poe.
The calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 665, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House number 8634, introduced by Representatives Cueva and Alvarez, entitled An Act Granting the Cadiz Radio and Television Network, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the Western Visayas area, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Grace Poe.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 666, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House number 8668, introduced by Representative Mendoza et al., entitled An Act Renewing for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Vimcontu Broadcasting Corporation under Public Act number 8116, entitled An Act Granting the Vimcontu Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations within the Philippines and for other purposes, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Grace Poe.
The calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 667, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House number 8670, introduced by Representative Nograles et al., entitled An Act Renewing for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Suara Sug Media Corporation under Republic Act number 8122, entitled An Act Granting the Suara Sug Media Corporation of the Philippines a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain for commercial purposes radio and television broadcasting stations in the Philippines and for other purposes, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Grace Poe.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 668, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House number 8786, introduced by Representative Maceda et al., entitled An Act Renewing for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Audiovisual Communicators, Inc. under Republic Act number 8124, entitled An Act Granting the Audiovisual Communicators, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the Philippines, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Grace Poe.
The calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 669, prepared and submitted by the Committees on Economic Affairs and Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship on Senate number 2227, with Senator Win Gatchalian as author thereof, entitled An Act Amending Republic Act number 7042, otherwise known as the Foreign Investments Act of 1991, as amended by Republic Act number 8179, and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate number 2102, sponsor Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 670, prepared and submitted by the Committees on Environment and Natural Resources, Tourism, and Finance on Senate number 2228, with Senator Cynthia A. Villar, Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay, and Legarda as authors, entitled An Act Declaring the Balanga Wetland and Nature Park located in Barangay Tortuga, City of Balanga, Province of Bataan, as a responsible community-based ecotourism zone and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate number 1820, taking into consideration House number 8441, sponsor Senator Cynthia Villar.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have sponsorship of 6 measures, franchise measures. with the permission of the body, Mr. President, if the body will allow, we will do an omnibus motion on the transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special orders. So I had the permission already we already sought the approval from the minority floor leader. So with this, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, we move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to calendar of special orders, House Bill number 8632, 8633, 8634, 8668, 8670, and 8786, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the enumerated House bills are hereby transferred.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we consider the said measures.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measures are in order.
May we ask the Senate Secretary to read the title of the measure, Mr. President?
The Secretary will read the short titles of the measures.
House number 8633, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Ultimate Entertainment, Inc. House number 8634, an act granting the Cadiz Radio and Television Network, Inc. a franchise. House number 8668, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Vimcon 2 Broadcasting Corporation. House number 8670, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Suara Sug Media Corporation. House number 8786, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Audiovisual Communicators, Inc. House, sorry.
6 measures.
8632.
Yeah, that's 6 measures. I think one more.
House number 8632, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to RT Broadcast Specialist Philippines, Inc.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, the distinguished lady, Senator Grace Poe.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized to sponsor the measures.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. May I ask that my sponsorship speech be inserted into the records and be considered read, delivered?
No. Mr. President, there's a motion. There's no objection.
Any objection? There being none, the sponsorship speeches are hereby inserted into the records.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, we move to suspend consideration of House Bill number 8632, 8633, 8634, 8668, 8670, and 8786 to be taken up again tomorrow for
Any objection?
amendments.
There being none, consideration of the measures are hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I ask for a 1-minute suspension?
Session suspended.
Ano pang... Thank you. Yes, Suara Sug. Kaming dalawa. Yeah, kaya. Sinong next? Are you going to sponsor anything? What? Anong iti-take up mo? Ano yan? Wala na? Yeah, no, after that, wala ka na. You're not handling anything else? No bills? No bills? Hindi speech. Tatanungin ko lang. I know. Ay, meron pa pala isa. Thank you, Mr. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
May silang yan. Session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Grace, if this representation, as well as Senator Gordon, myself and Senator Gordon, be made co-sponsors of the Suara Sug franchise. This is House Bill number 8670.
All right, we place that on record.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the franchise of the Sunshine Media Network. And Senator Joel would also like to be made a co-sponsor as well. And Senator Drilon and Senator Risa Ontiveros. Thank you, Mr. President. And one last request from our distinguished colleague, Senator Villar. She had asked me to sponsor one of her measures on a wetland bill. You were. You asked. Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special orders, Senate Bill number 1820. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is in order.
Let's read the speech. Wetland, just the wetlands one. Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1820 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure. May we have the number again?
Senator, there's a new number apparently, Mr. President. Senate Bill number 2228. 2228.
2228.
Yes, my apologies.
This is a substitute bill.
Yes, Mr. President,
All
substitute
right,
bill.
you
for the
may
first.
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Secretary will proceed.
Yeah.
To read the title.
Senate number 2228, an act declaring the Balanga Wetland and Nature Park located in Barangay Tortugas, City of Balanga, Province of Bataan, as a responsible community-based ecotourism zone and appropriating funds therefore.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes.
Mr. President, if I may be allowed to, or be recognized to deliver the sponsorship speech of the distinguished lady senator. Mr. President, to hasten the proceedings, may I just insert to the records the sponsorship speech of the distinguished lady senator, Senator Villar, with the permission of the minority floor leader.
All right.
Yes, Mr. President. Yes, medyo mahaba, Mr. President. Mga 6 na pages to. Single space.
So the motion is to insert into the records
Yes,
the,
Mr. President. This
sponsorship
is a local measure anyways.
Any objection?
Balanga Wetland Nature
There
Park.
being none, motion is approved.
I'm sure we are all in support of this. Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. No other matters to be discussed today. I move that we adjourn. Before we adjourn, Mr. President, just an announcement. We have an all-member caucus tomorrow at 3 p.m. I believe Under Secretary Carl.
After the call of the roll,
That's correct. Mr. President, may we recognize Senator Gordon?
Senator Gordon is
Just as
recognized.
an afterthought, Mr. President, which I should have done right away, I just want to know, I'm a supporter of the environment, from the majority floor leader, what are we protecting in the wetlands of Balanga, Mr. President?
The
Ano
water.
yan? Ano yan? Water.
The water.
We have to ask for-
I thought you sponsored it. I just want to know, Mr. President.
What will happen?
What are we protecting in the wetlands of Balanga, Mr. President? Because I think we should really consider that for our own edification.
We are protecting definitely.
I know there are plenty of crabs.
Migratory birds.
Huh?
Migratory birds.
Migratory birds. Are you sure?
Mangroves,
As gentlemen?
migratory birds. You know, mangroves, Mr. President, is a very important resource because that is.
We have
the-
mangroves in Subic Bay, but we have not declared it as a wetlands. When you say wetlands,
You should apply, Mr. President.
I'm reminded, Mr. President, of the Florida Everglades with its alligators and everything like that. And when we protect the wetlands, we should also, does this mean that we're going to have to add forest rangers, for example? I think that's something that we lack.
Your honors, I will give you 1 minute to wrap it up because you're both talking about something that we have already suspended.
I'm just trying to.
That is correct, Mr.
I'm just
President.
trying
That's the
to-
point of order. That's the point of order.
Have we had a coup here, Mr. President? I don't know why the majority of Lord Leader is saying that there is a point of order. I mean,
No, the Senate President raised the point of order.
thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to put it on the record that we are not just going to take it in hook, line, and sinker. And at the proper time, I will raise some questions upon
Yes,
Secretary Villar.
Yes, probably the chairperson of the committee, Chairperson Villar, I'm sure she had extensive hearings on the measure, she'll be able to answer the questions of his seatmate,
Oh, I would,
in the Senate.
I would love to watch the interpellation tomorrow between Senator Gordon and Senator Cynthia Villar.
I agree, Mr. President. So, where was I, Mr. President?
You're moving to adjourn.
Right, but before we move to adjourn, Mr. President, just to remind all the staff of our colleagues in the chamber to remind their principals that we will have an all-member caucus at 3 p.m. once the bell is rung and we take the roll call of members so that we can discuss important legislative measures. One of them happens to be measures pushed by the Finance Department. We'll be meeting with the Secretary of Finance tomorrow. He asked for this meeting and to face the senators to discuss these issues relating finance measures, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
All right.
point of inquiry and clarification. I
Senator
just
Gordon.
wonder why all of a sudden we have a special caucus with the Secretary of Finance. I mean, has there been a change of government? Have we been appraised of what we're going to talk about in terms of details so we can properly prepare for it, Mr. President? Because I always see the, what did you call, the Undersecretary, Mr. President?
No.
Yes, I always see him here, and I thought he is the able representative of the Secretary of Finance, and I just want to know what's going on. And I also see the Presidential Secretary for Liaison, Secretary Sitoy. I hardly see him, so I don't know. I don't know what his title is. I'm just trying to dig in, Mr. President. I know it sounds unparliamentary, but we feel forlorn. We have a presidential liaison officer, and I'd like to know why we are being told that we're going to have a special caucus tomorrow, Mr. President. Can the majority floor leader enlighten us, or maybe the minority floor leader will have a better view of things?
Yes, Mr. President, with
Minority
your
Leader.
permission. Yes, if I recall correctly, it was Secretary Sitoy who warned Senator Gordon that his bill will be vetoed.
That is correct, Mr. President. Not only my bill, but several bills, Mr. President. I can deliver a privileged speech right now, Mr. President. I don't want to tax your patience because I'm not an expert in taxation.
And the
However,
bills were vetoed.
Mr. President, when the Senate works hard, calls hearings, and goes out to the province, and then asks the people, and we spend the taxpayers' money to find out whether the bills we're trying to churn out are good bills for them, and then all of a sudden, when it gets there, I don't hear anything except the veto, Mr. President. We were just told the President's going to veto it. And now I'm just askance why we are suddenly having a special meeting with the Secretary of Finance, who, by the way, is a good friend and a classmate and a dorm mate in the Ateneo. Why all of a sudden we're having this meeting? What have we done to deserve this? I know finance, Mr. President, is not one of the 7 sacraments, meaning to say that is he looking for absolutions? I don't think we have a priest here. But nonetheless, I think it is a good time to ask why all of a sudden we're having a special caucus with the Right Honorable Secretary of Finance, Mr. President. You notice I changed pronunciation, no longer finance, finance, Mr. President.
But, Mr. President,
Why did you do that?
Because, Mr. President, once upon a time, my classmate who has in the Ateneo for 9 years, named Gary Lissing, described finance as one of the 7 sacraments, Mr. President.
Finance. Well, that is a very good issue for research because they have always pronounced it as finance.
Yes, Your Honor.
Even if you will notice the old Congress, where the old Congress is in the Agrifina Circle.
Agrifina, sir.
The Agrifina Circle was called
Was-
Agrifina Circle because it used to house the Department of
Agriculture
Agriculture
and
the
Finance.
Department of Finance.
That's right,
So
Mr. President.
together they called it the Agrifina Circle.
But then the Secretary of Tourism went there, Mr. President. They should have called it already Agritur. But, Mr. President, that's just a question that I know there's levity in my voice.
Yes.
But really, it's out of a matter of curiosity. All of a sudden,
Well, I think the answer is that the Secretary of Finance would like to make an appeal.
What is he appealing? The Supreme Court is a place where you make an appeal, Mr. President, not here. What is he appealing at? I mean,
Mr. President, there are several revenue measures that are still pending and
revenue measures, which means you will tax our people more, Mr. President? Is that it?
we will ask the Chairman of Finance, the Chairman of the Ways and Means to ask if he can answer if these are additional taxation
Yes,
measures.
Mr. President, I'd like to answer.
Revenue measures doesn't necessarily mean
President,
taxes, Mr. President.
I'll make a statement then I'll move to adjourn. I am with the result of the last election, come next Congress, I'm inviting Senator Gordon to be a member of the minority group. I move to
You know, Mr. President, I am Bagumbayan. I'm the only one with Bagumbayan here. I can go from majority to minority in an instant, Mr. President, and vice versa. So that's all, Mr. President. I just wanted to ask out of curiosity, and just to make our day a little bit more exciting, hopefully.
Tomorrow will be exciting.
Well, we'll see, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, for your patience.
The Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. So with that, to end the discussions on the matter, I move that we adjourn till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the 22nd of May, 2019.
Any objections? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, May 22, the 22nd of May, 2019.